Across the vast plains called the Pampas, the legendary gauchos once roamed freely. Skilled cowboys who helped shape Argentina's early history.
There is no fence anywhere in front of you. Not one post, not one wire, in any direction, for as far as the grass runs. Somewhere out on the Argentine Pampas, a horseman is waking up on the ground he slept on, with nothing between him and 100 miles of open plain but a horse, a knife, and whatever he can carry behind the saddle. For 2 centuries, this was simply how you stayed alive out here. The question isn't whether that's possible. It's what it actually costs a person to live with no walls at all. You wake up cold, because the ground gives its heat back to the sky the second the sun goes down, and there was no roof to stop it. The first thing you reach for isn't food, it's the mate gourd, packed with yerba, filled with water heated over last night's coals, and passed hand to hand if there's anyone else out here with you. Gauchos have run on this drink since the 1700s, and it isn't a luxury. It's the one warm, dependable thing in a life that has almost nothing else that's dependable. Your horse is already close by, saddled or half-saddled, because on the open range, the horse is not transportation. It's your food source, your only shelter, your alarm system, and by night, your bed frame. That last part sounds like an exaggeration. It isn't, and we'll come back to it, because it's the strangest true thing in this entire way of life. Getting dressed takes longer than you'd think for a man who owns almost nothing. Loose trousers, called bombacas, gathered at the ankle so they don't snag on brush or stirrup leather. A wide-brimmed hat to keep the sun off a face that's already spent decades in it. And the poncho, one piece of wool doing the job an entire closet does for anyone with walls to hang one in. Tucked into the sash at the waist sits the facón, a long, fixed-blade knife, a gaucho often shaped and decorated himself, because on the Pampas, a knife wasn't a tool you owned. It was a tool you were judged by, the same way a mechanic today gets judged by his own hands. You use it to butcher, to cut leather, to eat, and if it ever comes to it, to defend yourself. There's no hardware store within 100 miles to replace it if you lose it. Breakfast, if you can call it that, comes from whatever is standing nearby. In the earliest days of the open range, cattle and horses ran wild across the Pampas by the thousands, descendants of animals the Spanish had turned loose 2 centuries earlier and never bothered to fence in. A gaucho didn't need a ranch, a contract, or a grocery store. He needed a rope, that facón, and one animal willing to stand still long enough. Some carried boleadoras too, a set of leather cords with weighted balls on the ends, thrown low at a running animal's legs, to tangle and drop it without a single shot fired. He'd kill what he needed, butcher it on the spot, and eat the meat grilled over an open fire, unsalted at first, because salt cost money, and out here, money barely existed. That fire becomes the asado, and centuries later, it's still the center of every gaucho meal, the one tradition that never got fenced off, along with everything else. Here's where the no fences part stops being scenery and starts being the actual problem. Without boundaries, there's also no guarantee the herd you're watching stays anywhere near you. A few hundred head of cattle can drift for miles overnight, and there's no perimeter to stop them, no neighbor's property line to bounce them back. You find them by knowing the land the way you know your own hands, by reading hoofprints, wind direction, and the particular way grass lies down after something heavy has walked through it. Get it wrong, and you can lose a day or lose the herd, and out here losing the herd is losing your job and possibly your only steady source of food. You ride for hours with nothing on the horizon to aim at except the horizon itself. No fence posts to count, no road signs, nothing but grass and sky and the sound of your own horse's breathing. People who've spent their whole lives behind 4 walls find that unsettling. Gauchos built an entire skill set around it instead, tracking distance by the sun's position by day and by the stars at night, trusting a horse bred for exactly this, the Criollo, an animal descended from stock that had already survived generations loose on the Pampas before any human caught and rode it again. That horse can carry you dawn to dusk, on grass and water alone. You could not do the same on your own legs out here, not for long, and every gaucho knows it. And the solitude is its own kind of weather. Days can pass with no one to talk to but the horse and, if you're lucky, a dog trained to help hold the herd. Historical accounts describe gauchos as men who rarely settled down, rarely married in any formal sense, and moved from estancia to estancia, as the work called them. That sounds lonely from the outside, and sometimes it was, but it also built a fierce, specific kind of independence. The sense that a man's worth was measured by what he could do with his own two hands and nothing else. But the isolation had a release valve, and it was music. When gauchos crossed paths at a roundup or a fireside, a guitar came out, and sometimes two men squared off in what's called a payada, a duel fought entirely in improvised verse. Each singer had to answer the last line with a new one, on the spot, without breaking rhythm, and the loser was simply whoever ran out of words first. Argentina still marks a day of the payador every year in honor of the tradition, and one particular duel, held in 1884, is still talked about by name. For a life built almost entirely around silence and distance, the payada was the one place a gaucho got to be loud. Riding skill also had a price tag beyond the herd. When Argentina fought for its independence from Spain, starting in 1810, and again in the wars that followed, the military went looking for exactly the kind of horseman the Pampas had already made. A man who could stay in the saddle for 2 days straight, navigate without a map, and live off the land was worth more to an army than 100 soldiers who'd never ridden bareback in their lives. That reputation followed the gaucho into the national story long after the fighting ended. The Pampas isn't only grass. It's cut through by streams and rivers that look harmless until a storm upstream turns them into something else entirely. And a gaucho moving cattle across open country eventually has to cross one. There's no bridge waiting for you out here. You read the water, the same way you read the land, judging current and depth by eye, and you cross anyway, because turning back can cost you as much time as the crossing itself. Horses have gone down in current that look manageable from the bank. It's one more place where the job asks you to trust an animal with your life and simply get on with it. Then the weather turns, because on a plain this flat, weather doesn't build up gradually, it arrives. The locals call it the pampero, a wall of cold air that drops down from the south with almost no warning. And it can knock the temperature down hard enough to fog your breath within an hour of shirt-sleeve heat, with gusts that meteorologists have clocked well past highway speed. Summer works the opposite way, turning the same open ground into a shadowless griddle with nowhere to hide from it. There's no barn out here, no tin roof, no tree line, sometimes not even a rock outcrop for 100 miles. When the storm hits, you get low. You keep your poncho wrapped tight, because that wool poncho is doing double duty as your only coat and your only rain shell. And you wait it out in the open because there is, quite literally, nowhere else to go. This is usually where people ask the obvious question. If there's no house, no tent, no wall, where does a person actually sleep? The answer is the saddle. Not near the saddle itself. Out on the Pampas, wood for furniture was as scarce as shelter, so gauchos built a saddle called the recado out of stacked leather, sheepskin and wool. Layer after layer cinched together into something that rides comfortably on a horse all day and then comes apart at night into a mattress and a blanket. You unbuckle it, lay the pieces flat on the ground, wrap the poncho over yourself, and that pile of gear you were sitting on 6 hours earlier becomes your bed. Your saddle is your house. It travels everywhere you do, and everything you own that matters fits inside it or ties onto it. There is no version of open-range gaucho life where you own a bed that doesn't also carry you across a horse the next morning. It sounds almost too simple for how well it works, and generations of gauchos will tell you it's genuinely comfortable. more comfortable than it has any right to be, mostly because of the sheepskin layer against your back. But comfortable doesn't mean safe. You're still on open ground, in the dark, near a herd of half-wild cattle and a horse that could bolt if something spooks it. That horse is trained to stay close and to warn you if something's wrong. And that bond, built over years of riding together, is doing the job a locked door would do anywhere else. Out here, the animal is the wall. None of this lasted. By the later 1800s, a fencing product patented up north in the United States started shipping across the Atlantic in enormous coils, and it changed everything the Pampas had been for 200 years. Barbed wire was cheap, fast to put up, and unlike a gaucho, it didn't need to eat, sleep, or get paid. Landowners strung it across the open range mile after mile, splitting what used to be one continuous plain into private estancias with actual boundaries. The wild herds a man could once hunt for free were rounded up, branded, and locked behind wire that hadn't existed a generation earlier. Argentina's own national epic, the poem Martin Fierro, was written right around this turning point, and it reads now like an elegy for a way of life its author could already see closing in. The open, borderless version of this world effectively ended within a few decades. What's left of it survives today mostly on working estancias, where some of these same skills, the horsemanship, the asado, the recado, the mate, passed hand to hand, are still handed down and still practiced, just inside boundaries the old gauchos never had to think about. Visit one now, and you'll still be offered the same drink from the same kind of gourd, still watch a rider work a herd with the same lasso technique, still hear a guitar come out once the fire's going, some of it from riders whose grandfathers worked that same stretch of ground. The wire changed the borders. It never quite finished off the man, or the culture he built out of a horse, a knife, and whatever he could carry. What did survive, more than any single skill, is the standard. Even now, on ranches with proper fences and proper houses, the test of a real gaucho isn't how well he dresses for the part. It's whether he can still run an asado from scratch, still handle a rope with the same economy of motion, still sit a horse like it's an extension of his own spine. The tools changed, the bar didn't. So here's the actual answer to the question this started with. A person can survive out there with no fences at all, but only by turning almost everything he owns into more than one thing. The horse is transportation, a food source, and an alarm. The saddle is a chair by day and a bed by night. The poncho is a coat and a roof at once. Nothing gets to be single-purpose because, on a plain with no walls, you cannot afford to carry anything that only does one job. Would you trade a bed, a roof, and a fence for that kind of freedom, even for a week? Or does freedom like that only sound good from somewhere with 4 walls and a door that locks?